Hey, what's up, everybody? True Boxing here. Thank you for coming back to Get Hit with the Truth. So today we're doing the what's next on Artur Beterbiev, the undefeated and newly crowned undisputed light heavyweight champion of the world, following his career best win, a hard-fought 12-round majority decision over Dmitry Bivol, as they unified all four belts, and Beterbiev became the undisputed light heavyweight champion of the world here in the four-belt era. That took place on October 12th in the main event of a Riyadh season card. The main event was on ESPN Plus. The rest of the card was on DAZN. Before we get into that, if you could smash the like button, leave a comment, or subscribe to the channel. I really do appreciate any and all support that I can get as I continue to build my channel here. So, we've seen a lot of... there's been a lot of talk since this fight took place about what's potentially next. What we do know is that Beterbiev is likely going to fight Dmitry Bivol in a rematch. That's what the talks are right now. Eddie Hearn just a couple days ago came out and said that the rematch is on, that Turki Al-Sheikh wants it. We know Turki Al-Sheikh wasn't happy with the scoring. There was a lot of people that thought Dmitry Bivol won the fight. I personally had it a draw. I thought it was very close. I thought it could have went either way. If they wanted to give Bivol the fight 7-5 or Beterbiev the fight 7-5, I was okay with that. The 8-4 scorecard, I mean, I don't think I didn't think it was 8-4 in either direction, but I can't blame a judge for giving one extra round to Beterbiev because there was a lot of close rounds in this fight. So, I do want to dissolve any talks of a potential robbery. Robberies are Pacquiao Bradley 1. That was a robbery. You had a guy that probably won 10 or 11 rounds in Manny Pacquiao, and the judges fucking gave it to the other guy. I think there might have been one judge that had Bradley win 8 rounds in that fight. I don't remember the exact scoring, but I know the fact that Bradley won that fight was a fucking joke. That was a robbery right there. Or even more that, fights that were a little further, that were a little bit different in terms of the scoring. I like in the Kovalev-Ward 1 and the Haney-Lomachenko fights. Both those fights, I thought it was clear that one guy won 7 or 8 rounds clearly. Like, they were winning rounds convincingly. They might have lost a few rounds, but the rounds that they won were convincing rounds, especially Kovalev-Ward, because there was the extra knockdown in that fight. So that's why I had it that way. But Lomachenko, some of the rounds he won against Haney were very clear. This fight, there wasn't a lot of clear-cut rounds. I thought there was maybe 1 or 2 clear-cut rounds for Beterbiev and 1 or 2 clear-cut rounds for Bivol. They had a very similar aspect to almost the entire fight. Bivol was doing the better boxing. Like the first minute and a half to 2 minutes, he was counterpunching well and doing the better boxing, but he was moving the whole time. So the third minute or the last minute and a half, he was kind of slowing down in the round, and Beterbiev was cutting the ring off, landing the better punches and flurrying towards the towards the second half of the round, towards the end of the round. So that seemed to be how the fight played out right there, in most of the rounds. So I thought there was a lot of very close rounds that could have went either way, and it really depends on how you judge a fight, whether it's the aggressiveness, the effective aggressiveness, who's dictating the pace, or just clear-cut counterpunching. There's a lot of different levels. So again, didn't have a problem with the outcome in the scoring. And I was pulling for Bivol in that fight. I wanted Bivol to win the fight. So I didn't have a problem with it. I didn't see any robbery. Let's run through though, since we already know that Beterbiev and Bivol likely gonna happen. Let's throw, the other news. We know he got ordered by the IBF to fight Michael Eifert, his mandatory challenger. Don't know if he's gonna do that. There's been talks of him possibly vacating to fight Bivol in a rematch. Let's run through. Again, Bivol's the first guy on the top of the list. Likely gonna be his next fight, but will it be for Undisputed? And maybe not. There could be a possibility, because I also heard a rumor last week that Bivol is thinking about taking an interim fight before fighting Beterbiev. So these guys could have one fight in between before they fight each other again next year. So that, you know, it could not be Bivol. So let's throw that out there and be, you know, aware of all the options. Then there's David Benavidez. Technically, he's Beterbiev's mandatory as a WBC's interim champion, but we also know that him and Morrell, David Morrell, the WBA regular champ, have agreed to unify belts, or not unify, but to fight each other in a big fight, likely taking place in January. And if, you know, Beterbiev likely is not going to want to wait around for a Benavidez, but Benavidez is not in front of the line in terms of the mandatories. The mandatory system, when there's an undisputed champion, you have to go in a certain order. And technically, Benavidez would be last in the order because of the recent, because of how the mandatories have played out. Because I'll be honest, Michael Eifert's at the top in the IBF. He's been waiting around the longest. He won his mandatory shot, I think, in April of last year. And the last time an IBF mandatory happened, I want to say it was 2021. When Beterbiev fought Adam Dines. That was the last time he made a mandatory defense, and Beterbiev's been the IBF champion since 2017. So he's number one. Number two on the list would be the WBA belt, because Dmitry Bivol, who is the champion up until this fight, hadn't made a mandatory defense since Gilberto Ramirez in November of 2022. Then there's the WBO title would be next. Because the last WBO mandatory fight took place in January of 2023 when Anthony Yarde fought Beterbiev and lost. And then the WBC belt is last in the running because Callum Smith fought Beterbiev in January of this year and got stopped in that fight. So David Benavidez technically would be last on the list unless it's a big money fight that Beterbiev wants to make right away, which, hey, that could happen too. I just don't think it's going to happen next. And I just wanted to explain why, in terms of mandatories, Benavidez isn't at the front of the line, outside of being the biggest name of those guys. Then you got Anthony Yarde. Anthony Yarde is high in the rankings. He's not a mandatory for a rematch with Beterbiev. And again, I just don't see... Beterbiev and Yarde could fight again in the future. Yarde hasn't really done anything to earn that rematch, even though he was winning the fight when Beterbiev stopped him in the 8th round, and he did well in that fight. He hasn't done anything to earn the rematch, and he's not a mandatory. So, and he's not an overwhelming name that Beterbiev has to fight again. So I don't think Beterbiev fights Anthony Yarde next. Then there's a rematch with Alexander Votzik. He just lost to Benavidez. He hasn't done anything really in terms of beating guys, and he's not a huge name, so Beterbiev wouldn't consider a rematch with Votzik. Joshua Buatsi is a mandatory challenger. He's actually the WBO interim champion right now. He is waiting around for his title shot, but he's not first. He's not the next guy. So I'd like to see Buatsi get a shot eventually, but I just think a rematch with Bivol, and there's another mandatory in front of him. I don't think it's going to be Buatsi next. Then there's a rematch with Callum Smith. Makes no sense. He destroyed Smith back in January. Willie Hutchinson. Hutchinson just lost to Buatsi. Not a big name. No chance of that one. Michael Eifert. As I said, you might not know the guy's name. He's not a big name, but he is the longest waiting mandatory right now. He defeated John Pascal, the former two-time champ, in February of, I think it was February or March of 2023. He's been waiting over a year and a half. It's going to be, by the time he potentially gets a title shot, it's going to be over 2 years. I think it's either going to be Eifert or it's going to be Bivol. Because if Beterbiev and Bivol decide on making a interim fight in between, Eifert's not a huge punching threat to Beterbiev, and Beterbiev also gets a mandatory out of the way to hold on to a title. And the IBF are the biggest bitches of the belts, in my opinion, because they don't care if a big money fight or prestige is on the table. They will not, most of the time, they do not have their guys fight for interim belts in between and wait around longer. They enforce their mandatories more, even if you don't know the guy. And Michael Eifert, we don't know him, but he's likely going to get the shot at the vacant title or at Beterbiev, or he'll take step-aside money. So I definitely think if it's not Bivol, it's going to be Eifert. So pay attention to that. Malik Zinad lost to Bivol in June. That's not an option. Albert Ramirez is a no. A rematch with Hot Rod, a guy he stopped years ago, is a no. He's coming off the loss to David Morrell. David Morrell could be fast-tracked into something big soon, but I just don't think it's next if he beats David Benavidez in January, which I think he has a chance to do that. If he beats him, Morrell is right up. The winner of that fight, Benavidez and Morrell, are moved fastly into the driver's seat in terms of the biggest name. But Morrell and Benavidez, a winner of that fight, that magnitude, they become mandatory in 2 governing bodies. But again, Buatsi is next in line in the WBO ahead of both of those. WBA and WBC, which is Benavidez and Morrell in terms of mandatories right now, they are 3rd and 4th out of the 4 in terms of in line. So Eifert's got to get a shot, then Buatsi, but that puts Morrell in the driver's seat if he can pull off the upset over Benavidez and beat him. So for Beterbiev, what's coming next for him? Likely Dmitry Bivol, but I do think an interim fight, if they agree, work on a deal, him and Bivol, an interim fight with what's his name, Michael Eifert, is definitely a possibility. So we'll see what happens. But that's it. That's what I got. That's my what's next on undisputed light heavyweight champion Artur Beterbiev, following his 12-round majority decision victory over Dmitry Bivol as they unified belts to become undisputed champion on October 12th on ESPN Plus from Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, smash the like button, leave a comment, or subscribe to the channel. I appreciate any and all support. This is True Boxing, and you've been hit with the truth.